We may live in the whiz-bang age of selfie sticks, smartwatches, and totally not obnoxious hoverboards, but that doesn't mean that technology is a new phenomenon by any means. In fact, before any of us were born, and even longer before that, our great ancestors were inventing game-changing mechanics that even to this day have yet to be outdone. From ancient computers to perplexing prehistoric batteries and a unique method of melting immovable objects, every so often explorers and archaeologists come across something that completely baffles them, showing us a glimpse into the marvelous world of the past. Kicking things off with a rumble at number 9 is a remarkable piece of discovered technology that can detect earthquakes, even if they're in a land far, far away. Folks, cast your eyes on the first ever, drumroll please, seismoscope. Incredibly, this quake detector was invented by a Chinese man who can only be described as a super genius by the name of Cheng Heng, way back in 132 AD. That's exactly 1,887 years ago, so yeah, pretty darn ancient. That wasn't the only piece of tech this big-brained dude pioneered either. The south-pointing chariot and the early designs of rotating water wheels are also attributed to our main man Heng. Oh, and he cataloged about 2,500 stars as well because, you know, he really liked stars. These days, Cheng Heng has both an asteroid and a mineral named after him. Yeah, big whoop, so do we. Anyway, not only was Heng's invention way ahead of his time technology-wise, but he didn't skimp on aesthetics either. In fact, the giant bronze contraption featured 8 dragons face down along the outside of the barrel, which correlated to the directions of a compass. And beneath those dragons were 8 corresponding toads. Don't worry, it's not all for show, the animals actually served a purpose. When the ground would shake, a teeny round ball would drop from a particular dragon's mouth into that of the toad, making a clankety-clank sound and providing a much-needed insight into which direction the earthquake's epicenter was located. Not too shabby, Chang. Not too shabby at all. Earthquakes might not be fun, but sipping on a cold craft beer after a long, hard day's work certainly is. Apparently, though, modern generations aren't the first to brew their own lagers and ales. For a hasty comparison, the first American beer, Yuengling, has only been around since 1829, while one of the first U.S. modern craft breweries, Anchor, was only founded in 1965. Well, to that, archaeologists said hardy har har, went and did some digging and found proof that microbreweries existed long before we thought. When scouring Raqefat Cave close to Haifa on Israel's Mediterranean coast a couple of years ago, looking for what was either ancient relics, Aladdin's secret hideout, or hints to ancient diets, in reality, a Stanford archaeology professor named Li Lu uncovered evidence of what she thought to be one of the world's earliest beer-making setups, dating back to around 13,000 years ago. It wasn't as simple as tripping over an old Pabst bottle, though. She and her team actually had to analyze the bedrock to find traces of mashed wheat and barley, which are key beer ingredients for anyone out there who prefers to stick to milk or cider. Lou actually deduced that the brews weren't part of a Super Bowl party or a boozy Sunday brunch either. Instead, it was thought that the beer was in fact brewed for a funeral. After all, the grave they found the stuff in was part of a Natufian grave. Man, is anyone else thirsty? I would quench my thirst with this video about how the royal Dubai family spends its billions. Anyway, moving on. As much as archaeologists love to prance around and boast about their groundbreaking new discoveries, it's pretty hard to do so when said discovery has been sneakily submerged under the Mediterranean Sea for the last 2,000 or so years. We're talking about, bear with us, we know it's gonna sound hella boring, but trust us, it's cool, concrete. Now, we're not sure how much you know about concrete, but our friends at the richest geology department, who are totally real and definitely not made up, tell us that there are actually several different factors to consider when it comes to man-made rock. You've got your environmental concerns, the ability to withstand water and weather conditions, durability, strength, and the cost to produce it all. Well, apparently, when scientists pulled up a slab of ancient Roman concrete from the seabed, they realized that the 2,000-year-old rock was remarkably far superior to modern-day concrete in terms of durability and environmental awareness. How on earth was this possible? Well, put your science hats on, folks. It was because of the chemical reactions between concrete's materials: limestone, volcanic ash, and seawater. In the 1900s, concrete structures were designed to last about half a century. And that's about 40 times less than the Roman equivalent we've been rambling on about. So not only was modern technology found in ancient times, but it looks like we've actually gone backwards. Good job, humanity. All right, Romans, we're done with you for now. Next up to the plate is the ancient Greeks. Back at the turn of the 20th century, a mystifying piece of old-school technology known as the Antikythera mechanism was accidentally discovered in a shipwreck. It wasn't an easy find, though. The ship was sitting a whopping 60 meters below sea level. Props to the divers, though. Honestly, we can't even hold our breath in a kiddie pool for more than 10 seconds. Where were we? Yeah, the Antikythera Dinghy. So what is this thing? What's the big dealio? Well, it might look like a mesh of indecipherable gears, handles, and confusing symbols these days, but it's actually one of the most incredible astronomical inventions to have ever been created. Not only could it keep track of the positions of the sun, moon, and planets as they moved through the zodiac, but it could also show what phase the moon was in and predict solar and lunar eclipses as well. Amazingly, this complex device was dated all the way back to the 2nd century BC. A lot of people would go out on a limb and say that the Antikythera mechanism is, in fact, the first ever computer. Take that, Bill Gates! But that was about 2,200 years ago, which is about 800 years after our next piece of modern technology was created. Just in case math makes your brain fizzle, that's about 3,000 years ago, the time when the Assyrian Nimrod lens is said to have been created. Essentially, it's the world's oldest known telescope, and it wasn't uncovered until 1850 when Sir John Layard stumbled across it in what is currently Iraq. After it was discovered, scientists and historians just couldn't figure it out. They argued back and forth like, "It's clearly a magnifying glass, Stanley."
No, Roger, you're crazy, bro. It's obviously a burning glass to start fires by concentrating sunlight. Duh!
But then along came the one and only Italian professor, Giovanni Pettinato, who seemed to have it all figured out. Nah, you dudes are both wrong. This, my friends, is a one-of-a-kind telescope lens. How do you think those Assyrians knew so much about astronomy, hey? For any photography geeks out there, the Nimrod Lenses' natural oval-shaped rock crystal had a focal length of about 12 centimeters and a focal point of about 11 centimeters, which translates to roughly a 3 times optical zoom. And no, there was no automatic focus. On the other hand, for anyone who can't understand how to turn off the front-facing camera, that just means that it made things look really big. While this wasn't the first lens in the history of the world by any means, it is thought to be the first to be used in a telescope, and that's pretty darn nifty if you ask us. Speaking of telescopes and cameras and lenses and all that jazz, is there any worse feeling than having your camera's batteries die just before you finally get that epic sunset selfie opportunity? The answer obviously is no. There is nothing worse. These days, we usually carry around spare batteries, but believe it or not, back in the year 200 BC, so did they. Well, sort of. We're talking about the so-called Baghdad Battery, aka the Parthian Battery, which wasn't actually found until 1936, near Tel Kujud Rabu, south of Baghdad. In simpleton terms, this clever invention is one of the first examples of a prehistoric electrical power source. We always thought that Mr. Smarty Pants Italian physicist Alessandro Volta invented the battery in 1799. But this amazing discovery throws a little spanner into the works. So, how exactly did this contraption operate? Well, the mysterious cylinders were actually jam-packed with electrically charged Pikachus. Well, we would love that to be true. In all seriousness, it's a bit more sciencey. Time for the science hats again, folks. So, the barrels were capped with copper discs and held in place by asphalt. Those copper discs came into contact with iron rods inside the cylinder and would have been submerged in an electrical conducting acid solution. Okay, science hats off. Colorful spinny helicopter hats back on. For number 3, we're taking a look at a technology that screams futuristic. But it's actually even older than Great Aunt Pearl. Say hello to the huge amount of highly advanced robots that came out of ancient China. Granted, we're not talking about flying robotic cars, high-speed Roomba vacuum cleaners, or anything like that, but still, the ancient Chinese really knew how to take the concept of mechanical automation and use it to its full potential. There hasn't been just one unearthing of this kind of technology over the years, but actually a number of impressive mechanical engineering discoveries. Some of the robots actually date back to before the age of the Tang Dynasty, which was between the years 618 and 907 AD. Okie dokie, sliding on into number 2 is a technology that still to this day has scientists pulling their hair out. We're all familiar with the famous lost Incan city of Machu Picchu, right? You know, where all those sneaky alpacas photobomb unsuspecting tourists' obnoxious, "oh, look where I am" selfies. Yeah, well, there's actually a heck of a lot more ruins across Peru. The way Sacsayhuaman was created, for example, has baffled historians since the dawn of time, or thereabouts. Unless there was some sort of Wingardium Leviosa involved, they hadn't the faintest of ideas how those mammoth-sized stones were put so elegantly into place. That is, until archaeologists and other scientists realized that the answer to the mystery could have been unique Incan technology. One which was used to partially melt and soften the stone to make it easier to slide into place. That also is said to explain the characteristic glassy texture of the rocks in the greater Cusco region. So while this technology is yet to be fully understood, we know that it was a pretty darn smart one, that's for sure. Let's make like Chipotle employees and wrap it up with the final discovery on our list. It's not some battery, a weird telescope lens, or an old school robot. It is in fact an entire freaking underwater city, comprising of all kinds of advanced technological marvels. Divers came across this Atlantis-like metropolis on the Peloponnese Peninsula, south of Athens, and after analyzing the site with all their high-tech gizmos and gadgets, they declared that the settlement dated back close to 4,500 years. Spread across the 12-acre area, they found a plethora of preserved defensive structures, paved surfaces, pathways, towers, different kinds of pottery, and a whole bunch of advanced tools used to construct it all. Sadly, Aquaman was nowhere to be found, but still, that's some pretty splendid modern technology considering that it was way back before you or I set foot on this earth. And that's all for the times archaeologists discovered modern tech from ancient eras. What do you think they'll discover next? Let us know in the comments. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to The Richest, and join our notification squad. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.